Female cop visits boyfriend's house, realizes future father-in-law's old car is the key clue to the case.
Hello everyone. Enjoy these relaxing moments while you watch.
Alicia stuck her head out the car window and took a deep breath. The scent of lavender mixed with the early summer air soft and fresh enough to make her almost forget she was on her way to a place that could change her life forever. "How are you feeling?" Thomas asked, his hands steady on the wheel of the old Peugeot. He glanced sideways at her with that familiar half-smile. "Like I'm going backwards in time," Alicia replied, tightening her grip. "It's so quiet, it gives me the chills." Thomas chuckled, but she didn't. Not because the phrase was just a figure of speech, but because it truly did give her chills. The house slowly emerged behind a line of pine trees. An old colonial-style villa, wooden, rustic. On the front porch stood a man with his hands in the pockets of a wool coat, eyes cold and unreadable. Alicia recognized him immediately. Stephen, Thomas's father. The man Thomas had only mentioned 3 times in their 5 years together. "We're here," Thomas said as he parked the car. "Dad, this is Alicia." Stephen stepped forward. His voice was low and raspy, like old floorboards creaking under weight. "Nice to meet you, sir," Alicia said, extending her hand with a polite smile. Stephen shook her hand, his gaze briefly dropping to her belly. "You're a cop, aren't you?" "Thomas told me." "Homicide detective." "New York City," she replied evenly. "But I'm currently on leave." "Yeah. Leave is necessary for times of change." He emphasized the last word in a way that sent a chill down her spine. Thomas put his arm around her shoulders. "Come on, you must be tired." Alicia followed, but her eyes drifted toward the backyard and she stopped cold. A dusty old Ford Transit van sat beneath the shade of a tree. The white paint had yellowed, the tires were coated in red dust. The van would have been unremarkable, if it didn't look exactly like the one linked to 9 murdered pregnant women she had investigated. "That van," Alicia pointed, "hasn't been used in a while." Stephen shrugged. "I keep it for the memories. Used it back when I worked as an orderly in Salem. Over 20 years ago." "Never thought about scrapping it?" she asked, keeping her tone light. "That van reminds me of what I've lived through. You don't throw away memories from a life in medicine so easily, dear." Alicia didn't respond. Thomas tugged gently on her arm. "Come on. Mom's been gone for years. It's just me and Dad now. I cleaned up my old room for you." She nodded. But her mind was spinning with the image of that van. A 2000 Ford Transit. White. No license plate. Just like the report from victim number 8. Dinner was served in an old kitchen lined with wine-colored tiles. On the table, traditional jambalaya, red wine, and a slice of pudding cake. Stephen ate slowly, silently. Thomas tried to joke, but the atmosphere remained heavy. "My dad's not great with guests," Thomas said awkwardly. "Especially ones in law enforcement." Stephen looked up. "I respect the law. As long as the law understands human nature." Alicia tilted her head. "Human nature. Everything people do has a reason. Even murder." No one said a word. Alicia set down her knife and asked, "Then what do you think about the recent cases involving murdered pregnant women?" Thomas winced. "Alicia, maybe not during dinner." "It's fine," Stephen said with a thin smile. "I think sometimes, pregnant women can be gateways for things that shouldn't exist in this world." Alicia stared at him. "What do you mean by that?" "Just an old folk tale. In Salem, they say some children shouldn't be born. Because they carry something not quite human inside." Thomas put down his glass and forced a laugh. "Maybe we should change the subject." Stephen shook his head, still watching Alicia. "Once, I witnessed a birth. The baby didn't cry. Eyes wide open from the moment it came out. The mother died instantly, no clear cause. Where did that happen? Alicia asked, voice dry. Salem Hospital. 1992, I was the orderly on that shift. Alicia stayed silent. She remembered clearly, the first case had occurred in 2013. But maybe, something had been hidden long before. The next afternoon, Alicia visited a small town nearby. She used the excuse of getting groceries to get away from Thomas for a while. At the blueberry pie counter, she met Rose, a middle-aged woman who owned the bakery. Her accent was distinctly Midwestern. "You're Thomas's girlfriend, right?" Rose asked, eyeing her carefully. "Yes. I'm Alicia. His dad, Stephen, used to be an orderly at the hospital around here," she said while handing over the pie bag. She leaned in. "There were rumors." "What kind of rumors?" "He was very good back then. But then, something happened during a delivery. After that, he quit suddenly. The hospital never said why." Alicia frowned. "Do you know what year that was?" "Must have been 93. Since then he's lived a quiet life. And, things have happened around here. You should be careful." "What do you mean?" She didn't answer. Just glanced toward the hill where Alicia was staying. When Alicia got back, she paused by the old Ford Transit. She pulled out her phone and secretly snapped several photos, especially of the rear right tire, the one she remembered seeing red paint on at the 8th crime scene. A sound by the door startled her. Stephen stood there, hands in his coat pockets, eyes unblinking. "See something interesting about that van?" "I was just curious. Old vans like this usually come with stories." Stephen walked slowly toward her, his voice soft. "That van took many people to the hospital. And took a few, far, far away." Alicia swallowed hard and took a step back. "I'm tired. I'll head to my room for a bit." Stephen said nothing. But his eyes followed her until the door closed behind her. Alicia sat on the edge of the bed, her hands tightly clasped. The window was slightly open, letting in the scent of lavender and damp earth, but it couldn't mask the dread lingering in her chest. Her phone had no signal. The Wi-Fi in the house was practically useless. She pulled out a stack of miniaturized case files she had hidden in the bottom of her suitcase. Each page was a knife wound into her professional memory and now, a threat to her life. 9 women. 9 deaths. 9 horrors. All were between 10 and 15 weeks pregnant. No signs of assault. No external evidence. Just one chilling similarity: the uterus was cut open with surgical precision, clean, clinical. "Alicia." Thomas's voice came from outside the door, snapping her out of her thoughts. "Can I come in?" She quickly stuffed the files under the pillow. "Come in." Thomas entered, holding a glass of orange juice. "Here. You could use the vitamin boost." She took it and forced a smile. "Thanks." He sat beside her. "What are you thinking about?" "Just, how quiet everything is here." She looked at him. "It's strange. I'm not used to it." Thomas chuckled softly. "Funny. I thought you'd find it peaceful." She didn't respond. The truth was, she was scared. That night, after Thomas fell asleep, Alicia slipped into the hallway, case file in hand. She pulled out a photo from case number 4, a shot of Bethany Carter's body. Age 31. 12 weeks pregnant. Found near a forest edge outside Lynn, only about 30 kilometers away. She remembered the last task force meeting before she was put on mandatory leave. Her old colleague, Lieutenant Raymond Ingram, had said, his voice haunted. "This guy doesn't kill for sex or money. He kills because of a twisted belief. He does it, like a ritual offering." Alicia shuddered. In Stephen's eyes last night, she hadn't seen just malice. She saw faith. She pulled up a map. The 9 victim locations were marked in red ink. When she connected the dots, they formed an almost perfect circle centered exactly around this area. Stephen's home. The next morning, while washing her hands at the backyard sink, she heard a voice from the fence on the left. She turned. A man stood there, thin, scruffy beard, worn leather jacket. It was Frank, the nearest neighbor, a few hundred meters away. "You're Thomas's girlfriend?" he asked, cautious. Alicia nodded. "I'm Alicia. And you are?" "Frank. I raise sheep. I noticed you've been hanging around that old transit van." "Yeah. It just looked familiar." Frank lowered his voice. 10 years ago, I saw that van parked near the Berkshire's forest right before they found a girl's body there. I called the police, but no one listened." "You're sure?" "Dead sure. I even remember the old plate number. But it was removed after that." Alicia kept her face neutral. "Thank you. Please, don't mention this to anyone." Frank nodded. "Around here, there are things you're better off not knowing. But you should leave before it's too late." That night at dinner, Stephen unexpectedly poured Alicia a glass of strong whiskey. "Care for a taste?" "Thomas used to sneak this when he was 14. Thomas laughed. "Dad. I threw up all day after that." Alicia sipped it. She tried to play the role of a normal girlfriend, no suspicion, no fear. But Stephen's gaze still pierced like safety pins into her skin. "Do you believe in destiny?" he asked. She set her glass down. "I believe everything has a cause." Stephen nodded. "Then if someone was born to bear a certain responsibility, to restore balance, what would you call that person? A criminal, or a messenger?" She met his eyes. "I'd call that person a murderer." The air grew so heavy, it was like the whole room stopped breathing. Stephen let out a soft chuckle and took a sip of whiskey. Thomas quickly changed the topic to a new documentary on Netflix. But Alicia knew the game was entering a much more dangerous phase. At dawn, Alicia jolted awake, nauseated. She rushed to the bathroom, clutching her stomach. Terror crept up her spine as she felt the small life growing inside her. She looked at herself in the mirror. Pale face, cracked lips, sunken eyes. "You're going to be okay," she whispered. "I won't let anyone hurt you." She returned to her room and retrieved the mini recorder hidden beneath her clothes. She began recording her deductions just in case she never got the chance to speak them aloud. Note, May 15th, location, Stephen's house. Red flags include, a white Ford Transit matching the suspect vehicle seen at crime scene 8, confirmed by neighbor Mr. Frank. Map analysis shows the center of the incidents lies within a 50 kilometers radius of this house. The basement smells of antiseptic. Thomas dodged the question when asked. Both father and son have medical backgrounds. Stephen was dismissed from a hospital in 1993. Thomas studied obstetrics but was expelled due to deviant behavior. She paused briefly, then continued. "I'm currently 13 weeks pregnant. And I believe I'm the next target." The next morning, she pretended to forget her wallet so she could return to the Ford Transit while Thomas was busy on a phone call inside. She casually crouched down near the rear tire, pretending to tie her shoe, her eyes scanning the faint red paint smear still visible on the rubber. Industrial red paint identical to what was found at the scene of the 8th murder. She immediately turned away, her heart pounding like a drum. That afternoon, a middle-aged woman appeared at the gate. She introduced herself as Lucy Taylor, a retired nurse from Salem. Stephen greeted her first, but Alicia quickly stepped out. "I'm Thomas's girlfriend. Can I help you with something?" Lucy hesitated slightly. "I just wanted to say hello. I used to work the same shifts as Stephen. Back then, he was head orderly." "Really? What was he like?" She glanced around, then lowered her voice. I think he did something terrible. But no one dared to speak. After a young woman died unexpectedly during labor, the records were sealed and he disappeared from the profession. Alicia frowned. What year was that? 1993, March. A girl named Martha. I'll never forget that scene. Alicia clenched her fists. Thank you. I really needed to know that. Lucy looked at her as if wanting to say more, but simply placed a gentle hand on Alicia's shoulder. Be careful. Truly. That night, Alicia locked her bedroom door and sat beneath the dim yellow lamp, eyes fixed on the photos of the victims. 9 pregnant women. 9 surgically removed wounds. No blood, no mess. No DNA. No trace. As if a seasoned surgeon had performed what he believed to be a ritual. And now, she was number 10. The sunset filtered through the pine branches, casting a reddish glow over the gravel road leading to the house. Alicia walked slowly, each step weighed down by the storm of thoughts swirling in her mind. She had just returned from a quick call in town made at a payphone to avoid surveillance. Thomas was sitting on the porch steps, casually whittling a dry branch, looking as relaxed as if nothing strange had ever happened. You were gone a while, he said, not looking up. Went to the market, Alicia replied. Craving fruit. Probably the baby. Thomas looked at her and smiled gently. The little one speaking up already, huh? Yeah. She forced a smile, but inside she felt shaken. The man in front of her, was he still the same one she had loved for 5 years? Dad's making dinner, Thomas added. He hardly ever cooks. Today must be special. Alicia nodded and quietly walked inside. From the kitchen came the rich scent of stew, but instead of comfort, it only made her feel suffocated. Dinner passed in the same heavy silence as always. But this time, Stephen seemed different. He ate more slowly, his gaze often drifting to Alicia's belly, then locking eyes with her as if waiting for a reaction. Are you getting used to Salem? Stephen asked softly. Pretty much, Alicia replied, keeping her voice calm. Fresh air. Friendly people. You spoke with Frank? Alicia paused for a split second. Yes, he offered me blueberry pie. Thomas chuckled. That was Rose. Frank only knows booze and sheep. Stephen sipped his wine. Be careful what he says. Old folks confuse things, and talk nonsense. Alicia nodded, but she knew Frank wasn't confused. And he hadn't talked nonsense. Everything he said was falling into place like a bloody puzzle. Do you believe in demons? Stephen suddenly asked. She looked up, startled. Excuse me? Do you believe some people carry something impure inside them? Dad, Thomas cut in, annoyed. We're having dinner. Stephen kept his eyes on Alicia, voice calm. Some babies shouldn't be born. I've seen them. Jet black eyes, no crying, no response to light. The mother died on the table. But the baby lived. Alicia set down her fork. I think you're confusing medicine with superstition. No, Alicia, Stephen smirked. You're a cop. You know some things can't be explained. And one day, you'll have to choose believe the books, or believe your instincts. She didn't respond. Thomas sighed and set his glass down. Dad. That's enough. That night, Alicia couldn't sleep. Stephen's words circled her mind like a curse. She stepped into the hallway, heading for the kitchen to get water. But as she reached the stairwell, she froze. The basement door was ajar. A gust of cold air blew up from below, carrying the sharp, unmistakable scent of dried blood and antiseptic. The smell sickeningly familiar like every morgue she had ever stood in. Her heart pounded. She crept closer, crouching, eyes fixed on the narrow gap. A dim yellowish light glowed from beneath, pale like an old surgical lamp. And the sound metal scraping lightly against metal chilled her to the bone. She stepped back, nearly bumping into the wall. And then a voice rang out behind her. "What are you doing here?" It was Thomas. She turned around quickly, taking a step back. "I was thirsty." "All right. I'll get you some water. Come on, I'll walk you back to your room." The next morning, Alicia used the excuse of going for a walk, but in truth, she went to see Emily, a gynecologist at the town clinic nearby, someone she had contacted in secret to get prenatal care without leaving a trace. Emily saw her in a private room behind the pharmacy counter. A young woman with neatly tied black hair, she spoke in a low voice. "Your baby's perfectly healthy. 13 weeks. No abnormalities at all. Thank you. Can you print me a copy of today's ultrasound?" Emily blinked. "This is the second time you've asked. Is something wrong?" "Please just print it," Alicia said, voice hushed. "And don't write my name on the record. Please." Emily nodded, though clearly uneasy. "All right. But if something's wrong, you should tell me. No one around here is a stranger to the Stevens. What do you know about him?" Emily glanced around, then whispered, "He used to assist in labor and delivery. But after a woman died giving birth in '93, he disappeared. My mom was the nurse on shift that night. She never talked about it. But every night, she'd dream of blood." Alicia shivered. "Thank you. I'll come back." Back at the house, Alicia tucked the printed ultrasound into the inside pocket of her coat. As she passed the hallway, she saw Stephen standing by the basement door. "You're up early," he said. "Just went for a walk." "A walk without telling Thomas?" He raised an eyebrow. "Not safe for a pregnant woman to go alone." She held her tone steady. "I stayed close." Stephen stepped toward her, eyes darkening. "Your child has a beautiful soul. I can feel it. But beauty can draw attention. You understand?" Alicia felt a chill down her spine. "I don't understand what you mean." He tilted his head. "It's all right. You will." Then he turned back inside, leaving her frozen in the hallway, the floorboards creaking, as if the house itself was breathing with something buried beneath it. Dawn reached the house through a thin mist, casting a pale gray light over the backyard. Alicia stood by the window, hands trembling as she lifted a small pair of binoculars to her eyes. The Ford Transit was still there, bloated like a rotting corpse in the morning light. But today, she wasn't just watching. "Don't be afraid," she whispered to her belly. "I need to know the truth. For both of us." When Thomas's voice echoed from the kitchen laughing, talking on the phone, Alicia knew it was time. She pulled on thin rubber gloves and walked across the yard as if simply enjoying the morning air. She crouched by the rear right tire, eyes scanning the dusty surface. A faint red smear, worn down by time, still clung to the rubber like dried blood on skin. Her breath caught. That paint was the exact kind the forensics lab had identified at the 8th crime scene, industrial paint only found on old traffic signs. In that moment, she knew there was no doubt. She was living in the lair of a killer. At noon, Alicia faked a headache to avoid eating with Stephen and Thomas. She waited for them to leave the dining room, then slipped quietly down into the basement. Flashlight in hand, her heartbeat thundered in her ears. The basement door creaked open like a moan. The air below was ice cold. Each step down the rotting wooden stairs creaked under her weight. When she reached the bottom, she froze. Before her was an underground room. Not a typical storage basement, this was a mini surgical theater. An old, dusty stainless steel operating table sat in the center, but it wasn't abandoned. Overhead was a surgical light from the 1990s, bulb intact. A metal tray held rows of surgical tools. Some blades still had dried, blackened blood on them. Alicia gagged. To the left stood a file cabinet. She ran her hand across it and opened a drawer. Inside, neatly organized, were ultrasound photos. Numbered from 1 to 9. She pulled out photo number 3, the name written in red ink, Natalie Gordon, 11 weeks, 2016. She went cold. Photo number 7, Mary Sullivan, 14 weeks, 2020. All were victims she had investigated. Then she pulled the last sheet. A brand new photo. Sharp, fresh. Name, Alicia Wilson. Week 13. On the back, scrawled in messy handwriting. Number 10 belongs to the light. Alicia collapsed, gripping the edge of the surgical table, her mouth open but no sound coming out. Her cheeks burned. Tears streamed down her face. No. No. This can't be. Behind her were the lights that had illuminated so many extinguished lives. In front of her, the truth, she was the next target. Footsteps creaked on the wooden floor above, snapping her out of the nightmare. She shoved the ultrasound photo into her coat pocket, closed the file drawer, switched off her flashlight, and hurriedly ascended the stairs. Just as she shut the basement door, Thomas stepped out of the kitchen holding a glass of water. "Where were you?" he asked, eyes narrowing slightly. Alicia forced a smile, wiping her forehead. "Went to get a bottle of mineral water. I felt a bit nauseous." Thomas handed her the glass. "Drink this. Lemon and ginger." She took it, trying to steady her shaking hands. "Thanks." He stood close, his eyes studying her. "Are you okay? You look pale. Probably hormones." She stepped back. "I'm going to lie down." Thomas didn't stop her, but his eyes didn't leave her back. In her room, Alicia pulled out the ultrasound and pressed it between the pages of her notebook. She opened her phone, planning to snap a photo and send it, but there was no signal. Cut again. She removed the back cover and found a small device attached to the battery. An audio tracker. She trembled as she placed it on the bed. This whole house was a trap. And she was the prey. She wrote quickly in her notebook. Confirmed, 9 ultrasound images match 9 victims. One image is mine, 13 weeks. Operating room in the basement. Audio tracker inside phone. They know everything. Stephen is the manipulator. Thomas may be complicit. That afternoon, during a rare moment alone outside, Alicia pretended to visit the pharmacy to ask about prenatal vitamins. But her real aim was to see Lucy Taylor again, the retired nurse who had visited Stephen days earlier. Lucy lived in a small house on the outskirts of town. Alicia knocked 3 times. A moment later, the door opened, Lucy squinting. "Alicia? I need to talk. One last time." Lucy opened the door and let her in. The small house was warm, filled with religious paintings. As Alicia sat, Lucy spoke quietly. "What have you found?" Alicia opened her bag and pulled out the ultrasound labeled number 10. Lucy's hands shook. "Dear God. You have to tell me everything. About Stephen. About 1993. Lucy bowed her head, lost in thought for a long while. Then she began. "Back then, we worked the same shift. A girl 19, having her first baby. Everything was normal. But when the baby came out, Stephen suddenly grabbed it and said it wasn't human. He was suspended, but no one called the police. Why not? Because Thomas's father was the department chief. He said, the family has suffered enough. Stephen disappeared after that. A year later, his wife committed suicide. Everyone believed it was divine punishment." Alicia clenched her fists. "Do you think Thomas knew?" Lucy stared at her, eyes clouded with fear. "If he didn't, then why does Stephen have your ultrasound?" That night, Alicia played the part of a naive little lamb. She sat in the living room knitting, pretending nothing was wrong. Stephen walked by. Next Saturday is a good day. Excuse me. He turned back, his eyes vacant. Full moon. At 3 a.m. She smiled weakly. You follow moon cycles? No. But nature has its own rhythm. So do unborn children. There are moments when it's their time. He walked away. Alicia turned her face, her eyes burning. She returned to her room and locked the door. Outside, Thomas's gentle voice. Alicia. I'm tired. I want to rest early. Can I come in? No. He stood there for a moment, then said softly. I love you. Don't be afraid. Don't let your thoughts wander. Everything is being prepared for you. Alicia didn't respond. When his footsteps finally receded, she clutched the small wooden charm above her bed, a gift from her mother when she received her first assignment. She whispered, if this is the end, then I'll make it the right one. She didn't know how long she sat on the edge of the bed. The ultrasound photo crumpled in her hand like a piece of the dead. The wind outside howled through the window, carrying the scent of lavender and damp moss. But inside her, there was no fragrance left, only the metallic taste of fear and the salt of her tears. She pressed her hand to her belly. The baby was still. She couldn't feel any movement, but something deep inside told her it was listening to every trembling breath she took. A soft knock. She flinched. Alicia. Thomas's voice outside. Gentle as ever. More dangerous than ever. She took a deep breath. What is it? You okay? Just tired. Can I come in? No. Her voice rose louder than intended. Then she corrected herself, I just need to rest. I have a headache. Silence. Then Thomas replied gently, then I'll wait outside. If you need anything, just say it. Alicia stayed still. His footsteps retreated, but she didn't believe it. She pressed her ear to the door. No sound. But no sound didn't mean no one was there. That night, she didn't sleep. She only waited for dawn. As the first light kissed the red-tiled roof, she packed quickly, pure instinct. In her bag, ultrasound photo, mini case files, recorder, phone, battery removed, bug flushed down the toilet. She walked across the yard, steadying her pace. Thomas's Peugeot sat in the driveway. But where were the keys? She turned toward the shed. Maybe he left them in his coat, or... Alicia? Stephen's voice froze her in place. He stood behind her, hands tucked into his wool coat, calm, eyes quiet as the dark. Good morning, she said, forcing a smile as she turned. Heading somewhere early? I need to return to New York City for a few days. Personal matters. I'll be back. Stephen studied her. Then smiled. Of course. But there's no need to rush. Thomas is about to take you to the town hospital. She frowned. Hospital? For a pregnancy checkup. Your baby is developing beautifully. I saw in the ultrasound. Her heart clenched. Her body began to tremble. Who showed you that photo? Thomas. He keeps everything that belongs to you. It's not his. Her voice cracked. It's mine. Humans don't own life, Stephen said. We're just guardians. No. You're not a guardian. You're a thief. Stephen sighed. Such a shame. You're a smart girl. But sometimes intelligence is just an obstacle to progress. He turned and walked into the house like the conversation had never happened. Alicia stood motionless, like a statue. She entered the house. Thomas was pouring milk into a glass. You ready? He asked, voice familiar as ever. For what? The checkup. Like I said. Don't worry, I made the appointment with Dr. Emily. I don't want to go. Thomas set the glass down, eyes narrowing. Why not? I don't think it's necessary. Well, I do. He stepped closer, gently taking her hand. Alicia, you've been acting strange lately. You don't trust me anymore. She pulled her hand back. You tell me. What should I trust? Trust that I love you, Thomas said quickly. Trust that I want our baby to be safe. And your father? Alicia's voice turned razor sharp. Do you want him around our baby too? Thomas looked at her. Silent. You knew, she said, her voice shaking. You knew everything. About the ultrasound. About the basement. About the women who were cut open and stripped of life. Thomas stepped back half a pace. Alicia, you're imagining things. No. I've never been clearer. I didn't do anything, he insisted. My father, he has strange beliefs, yes, but he's not a murderer. Then why was my ultrasound on that surgical table? Thomas didn't answer. You gave it to him. Just like the others. All 9 women had checkups at your clinic. You had access to their records. I didn't, he breathed hard. Alicia, you don't understand. I just thought I'd be obedient like the others. That I'd never find out. No. I just couldn't stop him. She stepped back. Then now I have to stop both of you. Thomas reached out. I love you, Alicia. Please don't do this. Love? She scoffed. You love me, then let me become number 10. No, Thomas. Your kind of love is silent complicity. She turned and marched to the door. But Stephen's voice came from just outside, as if he'd been waiting. You're number 10, aren't you? Alicia stopped in her tracks. She turned and looked him in the eye, an old man with a slow smile. You are the final piece. The circle is almost complete. Your angel will be the beginning. Not yours, she growled. Not anyone's but mine. Then she bolted outside, jumped into the car. The keys weren't there, but she was ready. She opened the glove compartment and pulled out the spare key she had hidden earlier. The engine roared. Stephen tapped lightly on the window, whispering. You can run. But light always returns to its center. Alicia slammed on the gas. The tires screeched, gravel flying in every direction. The car sped down the winding mountain road, leaving behind the wind, the house, and the 2 people she had once called family. She drove like she was fleeing from herself. The fuel warning light blinked, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Night was falling over the mountain road. The headlights cut through the trees, casting shadows that looked like they were chasing her. Alicia's stomach clenched. She pulled over and vomited dry bile onto the roadside. The bitter taste stung her mouth. She braced herself against the steering wheel, panting. I'm sorry, baby, she whispered. In the rearview mirror, she saw herself, dark circles under her eyes, tangled hair, pale lips. She was no longer Alicia the investigator. She was a mother, desperate to keep her child alive. She pulled out her backup phone, an old device she had hidden in a secret pocket. Emergency SIM inserted. Signal found. She dialed the only number she still trusted, George Harris, former homicide detective, the man who had once mentioned the 1994 murder that mirrored her current case. It rang. Once. Twice. Then his raspy voice came through. Who is this? George, it's me. Alicia. I know who killed the 9 pregnant women. You do. George muttered. Where are you? I'll send coordinates. But I need your silence. You can't tell anyone. I've been suspended. I understand. I've been through something similar. You're not alone. Alicia trembled as she ended the call. For the first time in days, someone was on her side. She looked outside. The moon had risen. Silver light blanketed the forest. She whispered, "He believes in the light. So you and I will be the darkness." New York City greeted Alicia with crisp air and sharp golden sunlight on rows of red-tiled roofs. Though she had returned here after hundreds of cases, this time she felt like a fugitive. No longer a detective. No badge. No privileges. Only instinct. She parked in the basement of a small hotel and checked in under a fake name, Ellen Martin. When the receptionist, a young woman named Emma, asked where she was coming from, Alicia simply said, "Salem." Emma smiled faintly. "Salem? Must be more peaceful than here." "Peaceful enough to choke you," Alicia replied, then pulled her suitcase into the elevator. The room was plain and clean. Alicia locked the door, closed the curtains, and opened her suitcase. Inside was her personal case file, not the department's, but the one she had compiled herself over 3 years as lead investigator for the Special Crimes Unit. Every page was a brick in the wall of truth. She flipped to the file marked Thomas Stephen Clark. 2010, admitted to Harvard Medical School. 2012, switched major to obstetrics. 2014, suspended for inappropriate conduct in surgical simulation lab. Instructor notes, uterine incision on training model was excessive, bordering on simulated assault. She murmured, "Why didn't I see it sooner, Thomas?" Alicia dialed David Thompson, an internal records technician, one of the few who still owed her a favor. "Alicia?" David sounded surprised. "I heard you were suspended. Doesn't matter anymore. I need your help. If my supervisors find out." "David, I'm pregnant. I'm the next target of a serial killer. If you don't help me, my baby and I won't survive this month." He exhaled. "Send me the details." 3 hours later, David emailed her a leaked, encrypted file. File name, Stephen_Clark_1993_secret. She opened it. File, Stephen Clark. Position, Chief Orderly, OBGYN Department, Salem General Hospital. Suspension date, March 15, 1993. Reason, found storing unauthorized ultrasound images. Suspected of interfering in surgical procedures without medical purpose. Note, internal confidentiality enforced for humanitarian reasons. Alicia hissed through her teeth. Humanitarian? She called George the only person who still answered her since the suspension. "Alicia?" His voice was deep, concerned. "Where are you?" "New York City." I confirmed the hidden record. Stephen was disciplined. And Thomas didn't accidentally get expelled. They're a system. You sure Thomas is directly involved? Not yet. But he gave my ultrasound to his father. How else do you explain that? George sighed heavily. Don't act alone. I'm filing for a special warrant with the Supreme Court. But we need more direct proof. I'll get it, Alicia said. Even if I have to return to the snake's den. That night, Alicia left the hotel. Spring air in New York City carried hints of orange blossoms and the hum of distant traffic. Wearing a mask and a baseball cap, she entered Women's Health Clinic, where Thomas once interned and now worked part-time in temporary records. She couldn't get in with a staff badge. But she knew someone who would help. Martha Baker, a night nurse and an old friend from academy days. "Martha, just give me 10 minutes in the records room," Alicia whispered behind the hospital, in the dark loading dock. "You're crazy. You've been suspended. And my husband's on the hospital board. You have a 3-year-old daughter. If someone like Stephen or Thomas ever touched her, what would you do?" Martha was silent, trembling. Then she opened the side door and handed Alicia a white lab coat. 10 minutes. If anyone sees you, I don't know you. The storage room was cold and still. Fluorescent lights flickered above. Alicia moved quickly, scanning the name labels on file drawers. She stopped at one labeled, ultrasounds_Q1_2025. Inside were copies of ultrasound images, roughly 200 patients. She flipped through quickly. Johnson, Mary. Brown, Carla. Wilson, Alicia. Her heart pounded. She pulled it out, her own scan, same date as the one taken by Emily. But something was wrong. There was a duplicate. A second copy had been mailed to an address in Salem. Stephen's house. She murmured, "Who authorized this?" A voice answered from behind. "I did." Alicia spun around. It was Thomas. He stood there without a lab coat, just jeans and a white shirt, as if he had nothing left to hide. "Why?" she asked, clutching the ultrasound. "Because my father needed it. And because your child is the last." He stepped closer. "After this one, it ends." She stepped back. "Ends what?" "Your sick ritual." "It's not a ritual," he said, his voice quieter. "It's healing. My father believes every pregnant woman carries a flaw of creation. If corrected in time, we can prevent great harm." "And you believe that?" she snapped. "You studied medicine." "I once saw a baby open its eyes in the womb. Before birth. It stared at the ultrasound screen. No crying. No movement. The mother died. You're haunted. Just like your father." Thomas gave a thin smile. "Maybe. But that doesn't change anything." Alicia gripped the photo tighter. "I'm taking this to George. To court. You'll both face justice. No one will believe you. You've been suspended. A pregnant woman mentally affected by hormones. That's the story I've prepared." Alicia's hand trembled. "You can't hide anymore." Thomas moved closer. "I don't want to hurt you. But if you insist." She raised her hand. "Back up, Thomas. I've recorded this entire conversation." He froze. For a moment, the silence was suffocating. "You're still that sharp," he whispered. "Just like the first day I met you." She backed out of the room. Martha was gone just as promised. Alicia ran out of the hospital like someone escaping a crash. In her hands, the ultrasound was no longer just a medical image, it was evidence. That night, in the hotel room, she sent the full recording and images to George. With the message. "This is proof." Thomas gave patient files to Stephen. "They're not just father and son. They're partners." George replied within 5 minutes. "I'm filing for arrest warrants. Stay safe. We're on our way." Alicia clutched her stomach and exhaled. The baby kicked gently for the first time, she truly felt it. A real, living movement. A signal from within. "Mom, I'm still here." Alicia sat frozen in the dark hotel room, streetlight beams slicing across the floor like blades. She didn't cry. She didn't have the strength left. Behind her was the old world: justice, colleagues, belief in the system. Ahead of her was the darkness, a web spun by Stephen and Thomas for over a decade. And inside her was a fragile, brave life. Every kick now felt like a tiny hand gripping hers. Light, but strong enough to pull her back from the edge. Early the next morning, as she checked her phone, Alicia froze. A brown envelope had been slipped under the door during the night. She put on gloves and opened it. Inside was an ultrasound photo. Her ultrasound. On the back, a slanted handwritten note. Number 10. You should eat well so it fills out nicely. Below that, a crude drawing of a circle. With a red X at the center. She dropped the photo. It hit the floor like a death notice. Her phone rang. The screen read, "Unknown number." Alicia answered, hands trembling. "Did you sleep well?" A deep male voice, cold as a blade. "Stephen," she hissed. "How did you find me? You think you're clever, but you forget darkness has eyes everywhere. And justice has claws." "Justice?" He chuckled. "You mean the system that suspended you the moment you asked the first question? You've been cut from the game, Alicia. Don't cling to law. No one believes you." She remained silent. "Your child is very special," Stephen continued. "We've observed. The ultrasound shows perfect form. Strong heartbeat. This child might be the first angel born without flaw. You have no right to touch him. We didn't kill anyone, Alicia. We simply release what doesn't belong in this world." She hung up. Without hesitation, she flushed the SIM card down the toilet. Alicia withdrew completely into anonymity. She changed hotel rooms, wore old, shapeless clothes, pulled a beanie low over her forehead, and hid behind clear, non-prescription glasses. She contacted only one person, George Harris. At a rundown cafe near Grand Central Terminal, George sat waiting, hiding behind a worn book. When Alicia entered, he simply gave a subtle nod. "You holding up?" he asked, not looking directly at her. "Biologically speaking, yes." She sat down. "Mentally, I'm falling apart." George slid a small USB drive across the table toward her. "This is the investigation request I'm trying to push through. But the system's stalling. There's a mole. And if you're right, if Thomas is part of the network too, we'll need a different approach." "A trap?" she asked, eyes sharp. "You have to make them believe you're coming back. Willingly. They won't trust that easily. Stephen is a zealot. If you say the word forgiveness, he'll think his faith has triumphed." "And Thomas?" George sighed. "He's the broken one. But there's still emotion there. Use it." That night, Alicia sat in her hotel room and typed a message. "Thomas. I'm sorry. I was scared. I was confused. But I miss you. I miss home. I want our baby born where he belongs. I want to come back." She hit send. Less than a minute later, her phone vibrated. "Thomas, I've always been waiting. The door is still open. You and the baby, you are the light." 3 days later, Alicia stepped out of a car at the top of the road leading to Stephen's house. The Salem wind howled. Clouds loomed, signaling a grim night ahead. Stephen waited on the porch, as if he knew the exact moment she'd arrive. "Welcome home," he said with a smile, arms open like a father receiving a prodigal daughter. "Thank you, sir." Alicia forced the words out, keeping her eyes steady. Thomas stepped outside and hugged her tightly. "I was afraid you wouldn't come back. I had nowhere else to go. No one believes me. But we always have. You just need to rest. Eat well. Sleep deeply. The baby will thrive." Alicia offered a faint smile. "I'd like some quiet. Just for a little while." Thomas nodded. "I'll prepare dinner. Cod, your favorite." She entered her old room. Everything was just as she left it except one thing. Above the bed, a new painting. A red hand-painted circle. In the center, the number 10. She touched it lightly, confirming she wasn't dreaming. The wind slipped through the half-open window, scattering a few dried lavender petals across the floor. "Don't tremble, Alicia," she told herself. "They think you're weak. Let them." Dinner passed with a strange atmosphere. Stephen poured her a glass of wine. "You don't have to drink. Just raise the glass for the baby." Alicia smiled faintly. Yes. For Noah. Thomas looked up. You named him? It's a boy. I want him to have a name that reflects light. But also strength. Stephen nodded slowly. A beautiful name. Throughout the meal, he spoke more than usual about ancient cultures that believed childbirth opened a door to both light and darkness, about the mother's role as the final key. Alicia nodded occasionally, staying silent, letting him feed his own delusion. As she washed the dishes, Thomas approached and placed a hand on her shoulder. I didn't know how much I hurt you. I understand. It's not easy to live with distorted beliefs. I want to change, he said, voice faltering. If only you'll stay. She turned to him, eyes steady. I'm staying. For the baby. And for you if you tell the truth. Thomas didn't answer. Later that night, Alicia received a message from George. Button cam signal is clear. Tactical team ready. You must get him to the basement. Find a way. She closed her eyes, resting her forehead against the door. Baby. I need you to be calm. Just for one more night. That night, there was a knock. Stephen. Would you come down to the basement for a moment, he asked. I have some medical images to show you. Only you can truly understand them. She glanced at the clock hidden beneath her pillow. 2:47 a.m. She nodded. All right. Let me grab a warm coat. The button cam was already recording. George, don't fail me. Alicia pulled her coat tight and followed Stephen's slow steps. He carried an oil lamp, casting a golden glow down the creaking wooden staircase leading her back into the place she once fled in terror. The basement, the surgical tomb, now opened again like a black well. You really think I'd be interested in medical scans at 3 in the morning? She asked, voice casual, but her eyes alert. Stephen smiled faintly. You used to be an investigator. Someone like you lives for the truth. And truth doesn't keep regular hours. The basement looked the same, a hanging surgical lamp, damp stone walls, a silent stainless steel table. On it was an array of ultrasound images, copies Alicia recognized immediately. 9 victims. And in the center her own. This is the most remarkable collection of my life, Stephen whispered, admiring it like a masterpiece. This is a crime, she said coldly. You still don't see, he turned to her. I didn't kill them. I purified. Freed them. Each child is a door, and sometimes that door opens at the wrong time. You're not God. You don't get to decide that. No, Stephen said, stepping closer. I'm just the vessel. But I know how to read the signs. And your child number 10 is the apex of perfect deviation. No. Alicia shouted, clutching her belly. He is a child. Not a symbol. Not a sacrifice. Stephen smirked. You think you still have a choice? Just then, floodlights blazed through the basement window. A loudspeaker blared overhead. National Police. Everyone freeze. This is a warranted raid. Stephen froze. Alicia had backed away behind the surgical table, eyes wide but steady. Boots thundered on the floor above. Gun safeties clicked. Someone shouted, sweep every room. You. Stephen turned to her, eyes red with rage. You set me up. No. Alicia pulled out the button cam beneath her collar. You did. I just turned it on. Stephen lunged for a scalpel from the tray. In a flash of metal, he charged. Alicia backed away, screaming, in the basement. He's armed. The basement door burst open. 4 tactical officers stormed in fully armored, weapons drawn. Drop the knife, one shouted. Stephen raised the scalpel, manic. You don't understand. She must be purified. One officer tried to tackle him. Stephen slashed the second, blood splattering the stone wall. "Don't kill him!" Alicia yelled. "We need him alive." Two more officers closed in from both sides. Stephen was pinned down onto the surgical table. The scalpel clattered across the floor. "Cuff him!" The click of steel echoed like the final period on a decade of blood. Thomas was arrested at a hospital in New York City while attempting to hack into the system and retrieve a new ultrasound file. George led the arrest himself. "What were you looking for?" George asked, restraining him. Thomas forced a smile. "Just checking data." "Looking for number 11. Thomas's face went pale. In a secure detention facility, Stephen sat silent, head bowed. Before him were his lawyer and two investigators. Alicia stood behind the one-way mirror. George joined her. "We've got DNA from all 9 victims in the basement. Surgical tools. Ultrasound images. Some still have dried blood. He's done." "And Thomas?" she asked. "He gave all medical records to his father. Altered data. Used fake accounts to access the system. The court has approved charges for conspiracy." Alicia nodded, eyes locked on Stephen. "He once thought he was an angel. But the real angel is inside me." George looked at her. "If you hadn't done what you did, we'd still be blind." 2 days later, a special press conference was held at the U.S. Department of the Interior. The secretary himself announced, "The case known as the Father and Son Death Network is the most sophisticated serial murder investigation of the past decade. Former orderly Stephen Clark has been sentenced to life in prison without parole. Thomas Clark, charged with conspiracy, falsifying medical records, and aiding in homicide, has been sentenced to 30 years in prison." Alicia did not attend. Months later, in a quiet hospital room filled with soft antiseptic and sunlight, Alicia rested. For the first time, that sterile scent no longer triggered dread. George came to visit, holding a bundle of fresh lavender. "Knew you liked the smell," he said. "Not so sure anymore," Alicia replied with a tired smile, one hand on her now clearly rounded belly. "Have you decided on a name?" "Noah," she said, eyes bright. "A real angel, this time." George was silent for a moment, then asked, "Have you thought about returning to the force?" "I'm working on reinstating your credentials." "No. I don't want to go back to investigations." "Then what will you do?" Alicia looked out the window. The sun cast a gentle light. The wind whispered through the birch trees outside. "I'm going into policy," Alicia said. "I want every pregnant woman to be protected. Every child should be born in the light, the real light, not in the madness disguised as salvation." George nodded. "I'll be the first to sign your bill." That night, Alicia lay in bed, her hand resting on her belly. "We survived, Noah," she whispered. "We won." Outside, the skies over Salem were no longer terrifying. It was just a countryside, as it always should have been. September in New York City brought skies so blue it was almost unreal. No clouds. No wind. Just golden sunlight pouring like honey over sidewalks shaded by plane trees. Alicia sat by the window at St. Luke's Hospital, gently cradling the small, sleeping life in her arms. The newborn had rosy cheeks, closed eyelids, and jet-black hair. "Hello, Noah," she whispered. "You are the most beautiful thing I've ever protected." There was a knock at the door. "Come in," Alicia said softly. A tall man entered, silver hair neatly combed, crisp National Police uniform. It was Chief Alan Mitchell, head of the Special Task Force for the Salem serial murder cases. He smiled and nodded politely. "Am I disturbing you?" "No." Alicia tightened the blanket around her son. "Please, come in." Alan stepped forward and gently set a small wooden box on the bedside table. "On behalf of the entire unit," he said, and on behalf of the women who never got the chance to speak, thank you. Thank you for surviving. Alicia gave a faint, bitter smile. Or for dragging two madmen into the light. For having the courage not to stay silent when everyone else said to let it go. Alicia looked down at Noah, squirming in his blanket. When I saw my ultrasound on that operating table, I wasn't a cop anymore. I was a mother. And I knew I couldn't fail. Alan was quiet for a moment. Have you read the verdict yet? No, but George texted. Life without parole for Stephen. 30 years for Thomas. No parole. No leniency. The judge declared it a cyclic crime, with distorted religious intent and a coordinated systematic effort. Systematic, Alicia repeated. I used to believe murder was personal. But they turned it into a cycle of faith. A kind of diseased logic. Alan nodded. And that very conviction is what made the institutions look away. They thought Stephen was just a senile fanatic. That Thomas was just a failed med student. But they were the blade. And you, he looked at her, were the last shield. That afternoon, Alicia was discharged. George picked her up not in a patrol car, but in an old hatchback. We don't want to attract the media, he said as he opened the door. Thanks. Alicia placed Noah in the infant car seat. The media's still after us. The case is being called the Salem Blood File. A documentary's in production. But don't worry, your child's identity will be fully protected. And me? George glanced at her. You'll have a choice, stay anonymous, or lead the National Maternal Protection Initiative. Alicia was quiet for a while, then said slowly, I want to prevent what happened to me from happening again. Not with guns, but with laws. 3 weeks later, at the U.S. Department of Health headquarters, a closed-door meeting was held. At the front stood Alicia, now with a new title, Special Advisor for Maternal Protection Policy. She presented a detailed plan. A nationwide internal monitoring system for maternity hospitals. A secure reporting mechanism for suspected abuse of pregnancy records. Independent audit authority granted to a non-police agency. After her presentation, an older woman raised her hand. She introduced herself as Laura Turner, chief physician at a regional hospital. What if someone within the system is like Thomas? Alicia answered plainly, then we need another Alicia. Someone willing to break the rules to save lives. But ideally we build a system that never allows another Thomas to exist. That night, Alicia nursed Noah, then laid him in his crib. The baby waved his hands, cooing softly. She smiled. You're nothing like what your grandfather imagined. You're warm. You're soft. And you carry no darkness. She stepped out onto the balcony and looked out over the glowing lights of New York City. The breeze swept through her hair, carrying not the scent of lavender, not the stench of dried blood, only life. The next morning, she received an unmarked letter. The content was just 2 sentences, written in blue ink. Your son is not the end. He is the new beginning. Someone will continue the circle. At the bottom, the familiar symbol. A circle. And in the center, the number 11. Alicia clenched the paper, but her eyes did not waver. 3 days later, police arrested a nurse at a hospital in Tampa for illegally copying ultrasound records of pregnant women. On her personal storage device were scans labeled 11 through 15. In an emergency meeting with George, Alicia threw the file down onto the table. You see it now. This isn't a case. This is an organization. A secret faith. They won't stop just because we took out 2 links. George exhaled deeply. So what do you want to do? Create a special unit. Not to chase them one by one but to cut the source. Eliminate the information leaks in hospitals. You'll lead it? Alicia looked out the window. Rain tapped against the glass like an irregular heartbeat. No. She turned back. I'm a mother now. But I'll train the next one to lead. December. Alicia returned to Salem for the first time, not to face the past, but to seal it shut. Stephen's old house was sealed off. The lavender bushes in the yard had withered. The Ford Transit had been towed away, its scorched frame remained in the evidence warehouse. A little girl from the village, Lucy, ran up and asked, "Are you the lady from TV?" Alicia knelt and smiled. "I used to be. Now I'm just a mom." "Do you have a son?" "Yes. He's a real angel. No numbers at all." 1 year later. New York City. National Conference Center. Alicia took the stage at the International Summit on Maternal Safety. She presented a report titled, "Biological Vulnerability and Life Protection, Lessons from the Salem Case." She ended with a quote not from religion, not from law, but from experience. "No one is born a monster. But if silence lasts too long, the good become the blade." The entire hall rose in applause. At the end of the day, Alicia returned home and found Noah playing with wooden police figures. "Being a cop again?" she asked. "No," the boy replied. "I find lost people." Alicia pulled him into her arms and whispered, "Then go find the ones like I once was, and pull them out of the dark." Outside, the spring wind blew once more. But this year, it carried no scent of blood. Only real light remained. This story is a profound warning about the unchecked power of distorted beliefs and the consequences of silence within a justice system. Through Alicia's journey, we learn that justice is not just a name, it is action. Courage. A willingness to face darkness, even alone. Maternal instinct and the will to protect life became her greatest strength. No one should be isolated in the fight for truth, and sometimes, one woman alone can change an entire system.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.